So this is the kind of prospect update that you don't really ever go out there and think you have to make. That was a weird sentence, but essentially what I'm saying here is this update that we're having is so strange and bizarre that I kind of don't even know how I feel about this. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? Does it spell positive results into the future, or is this just somebody making a weird comment? Let's go out there and talk about Montreal Canadiens' first-round pick from 2022, Filip Mesar, the other Slovak player that the Canadiens ended up selecting in this draft. Because when it comes to Mesar and his profile, there are a few things that stand out. Mesar right now is 20 years old, 5'10", 172, right-handed right-wing guy, already signed by the Canadiens to his ELC. Drafted in the 26th spot, 2022 NHL Draft, a lot of Canadiens fans immediately saw the bromance once Mesar and Slafkovsky realized that they would both be on the same team. Two Slovak dudes joined alongside of Simon Nemec, who was taken second overall in that draft. Slovakia was represented well in the 2022 draft first round. But when it comes to Mesar and his production, this season he had split the load between the Kitchener Rangers in the OHL and the Laval Rocket in the AHL. In Kitchener, he was over a point-per-game guy, 52 points, 45 games played, and he had 16 points in 10 games in the playoffs, whilst in Laval he had scored 1 assist in the 2-game sample he had had. Unfortunately, the way Mesar's production has shaped up over the past 2 years hasn't really been too amazing if you look at it in the context of the OHL. Normally, junior players who are draft eligible are able to get, let's say, a point-per-game record in the OHL or just over a point per game when they're getting selected. But to be 2 years removed from his NHL draft and to see Mesar get only 52 points in 45 games played, it is a little bit concerning if you wanted to go out there and say, hey, his point production is comparable to XYZ. Next year, he'll be in the Laval Rocket system full-time, so we'll see what he's capable of doing in a professional capacity. But today's update isn't really focusing mostly on the numbers. Instead, what I wanted to do was give a little bit of an explanation, quote-unquote, as to why these numbers might have been a little low. Let's go out there and read this article from TVA Sports from June 26th. So this is actually from a while ago, but we didn't get around to covering this until now. Was Filip Mesar too good for the OHL? That's what he seems to think. And already you're starting to see, okay, this is gonna be kind of intriguing. Where exactly is this article going to go? This article, of course, is in French. I'm going to translate it to English via the Google machine and then leave a link in the description if you want to go ahead and read this yourself. But in an interview with a Slovak media outlet, Filip Mesar, the Canadiens' first-round pick in 2022, tried to explain the reasons for his performance being below expectations after the organization decided to return him to the Kitchener Rangers. When I was trying to create offense, my teammates were a little late, and it frustrated me a little bit, but I had to get over it, he said. Despite playing in the same team as Carson Repkov, who had scored 52 goals, and Hunter Brustevich, who had 92 points as a defenseman in Kitchener, Filip Mesar struggled to dominate offensively as a 19-year-old in the OHL. He was limited to just 52 points, including 19 goals in 45 games played, despite playing an offensive role. He also admitted that he had a hard time accepting his release from the Laval Rocket last fall. But the organization made him understand that players like Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield weren't playing in the NHL at the same age. It was only in the playoffs that he managed to establish himself as an offensive engine of this team, collecting 16 points in just 10 games. Although he is still considered a rookie, Mesar confirmed he will not participate in the Canadiens development camp, which had just concluded. It took place a few days after the NHL draft. He will, however, be present at rookie camp in September. Now, I did see a few people making a big deal out of Filip Mesar not participating in development camp. Oh, he's turning his back on Kent Hughes. He's saying no to the Canadiens. He's expressing defiance. Like, some people are getting really sensitive about him not deciding to go to development camp. And honestly, I can understand why that perspective exists. We had seen Cutter Gauthier with the Philadelphia Flyers a year ago go through a similar process. He did not attend camp. And a lot of people were kind of saying, okay, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Why is this going down? We don't really understand the reasoning there, but it was seen as something that a lot of Flyers fans should have shrugged off at the time. But we all recognize that as that story went on, The sentiment that caused Cutter Gauthier to skip out on Flyers camp was the same sentiment that forced him to get traded just a few months later because he wasn't happy with being a Flyer. So for Filip Mesar to go out there and exhibit some sort of a similar thing where he didn't show up for development camp but will be showing up for rookie camp, it does make things a little bit interesting when you consider his own comments as well as to why he didn't produce all too much in the OHL. He was frustrated that he was sent down and he didn't produce all too much either way and ends up blaming his teammates for some of that production. All in all, this is a very strange update, and it's one where, when you think about it like just on paper, there isn't really a common consensus that you can come to. Like, I get some Canadiens fans are going to look at this and say, oh wow, we're starting to see Filip Mesar have a few bad qualities in his perspective. How he might be the guy to go out there and blame teammates, how he's not going to take accountability, how he's sort of entitled because he said that he wanted to stay in the AHL and he was frustrated when they demoted him. There are a few negative roads that you could go down, but you could also spin this positively and say, hey, Filip Mesar is a guy who takes no BS. He's a guy who has a high standard for himself and the organization that he is a part of, and that is a good thing. This is demonstrating his competitive nature and how he wants to be at his best for the best version of the teams that he's playing for every single night, and how he has expectations of his teammates as well, and he's not afraid to call them out if they're making bad plays. You can spin this either way, but at the end of the day, it's very uncommon territory for a hockey player, never mind a prospect, to go out there and label his teammates as being part of the problem as to why he wasn't able to produce points. My line mates were late. It frustrated me. I had to get over it. Like, I don't want to go out there and say I hate this guy. I mean, he's a Canadiens prospect. He's got middle six potential. Of course, I want to see him succeed. But some of the players that Filip Mesar was playing with the Kitchener Rangers were very good players. I'm not too certain that saying that a guy like Hunter Brustevich, for example, was a slow hockey player who couldn't read the play the way Filip Mesar wanted him to. Like, it seems very odd, in my opinion, to have that conclusion when talking about his team. Of course, though, these are just some comments taken from the Slovak interview that is also on the internet. That is available for you to read too. It's linked in the TVA Sports article. But either way, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comments section below about Filip Mesar's odd comments, these odd updates about him not attending Canadiens development camp, as well as his attitude towards his teammates on the Kitchener Rangers. Does this scream red flag to you? Is this a kind of thing that you're paying attention to even? Or is this a good thing? Furthermore, I wanted to ask one more question. If this wasn't Filip Mesar saying these comments, let's say it's somebody else, another first-round pick the Canadiens have, and it's a guy who doesn't really have the best production in the OHL, despite being a 19-year-old player, and he starts blaming his teammates, and he doesn't show up to camp and everything. If it's not Filip Mesar, do you have the same reaction? I feel like this is kind of an observation on my behalf. I feel like there would be some sort of a bias given to Mesar automatically because, hey, this is Juraj Slafkovsky's guy. This is the player that Slafkovsky wanted the Canadiens to bring onto their team. And having Mesar around will probably keep Slafkovsky happy, right? So is there some sort of a bias, oh, you're giving Mesar the pass to say things that you probably wouldn't have been okay with otherwise if he wasn't Filip Mesar, because he is a very complimentary asset to Juraj Slafkovsky, the first overall pick in that year's draft. That's just a different kind of thought process that I wanted to explore. See if there's some sort of a conversation to have about that. If it was somebody else than Mesar saying these comments, would you have a different response to it? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this Vishal 99, and bye.